Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Bibliofitness. So today I wanted to go ahead and talk about the first two books I've been reading lately because it's a two-parter. And I'm going to preface my comment by saying that all the people that I talk about and I'm going to talk about on this channel are not. I don't agree with what they did. I don't agree with their values. I've always been very much into military history. I've very much into conquerors and eras and civilizations. Like right now, I'm listening to a podcast on the history of Rome. Roman civilization has always been the most fascinating civilization to me, at least. If I ever had the opportunity to have kids, my sons will all be given Roman names. I just love Romans. They're very interesting to learn about, and they're interesting to read about because there's quite unique parallels, scary parallels that you can make in relation to how things are transpiring in the United States in this present moment, and to how things transpired in the Roman Empire or before the Roman Republic, before the whole Caesar civil wars and all that. Um, so, I've been reading recently about the Third Reich. Uh, I've been reading Volker Ulrich, this man right here. Um, you know, the most infamous man of the 20th century, one could argue. Um, I've been I've always been fascinated with that mind, and like I said, fascination is does not automatically equal to reverence. Or like I said, I don't agree with him. I don't obviously. This is probably one of the most evil men to have ever walked the earth. And, good and evil could be quite a subjective term in regards to where you are in the world, but I'm pretty sure we can all agree that what this man did was egregious beyond comprehension. And I watched documentaries about this man. Like, I feel like this guy, Jesus, and fucking and the founding fathers, they're just like him and like Napoleon, for example. They get biographies like every year, but this is a great biography, and I've learned about him before. Um, it's been a crazy time, and I just want to learn more about him. And really go into deep in the mind because Volker Ulrich does a really good job in going into the minds of this man. And like I'm not gonna go on a big tangent or a big discussion about this guy's life because you can do that for yourself, and I'm not qualified. I'm not gonna try to make this an hour-long video. I'm not done with it, um, but I can still talk about it. This is not the first material that I've had reading about this man, or I've watched documentaries, and I'm pretty sure everyone and their mother knows about Hitler. Everyone knows about Adolf. The leader of the Third Reich, the progenitor, already. I mean, not the progenitor, the creator of the Holocaust, and just so many crimes against humanity that it's just absolutely ridiculous. And for some reason I just wanted to read about it. Like I had the first part, the part I just showed is the first one, which is Downfall. I have a set right there. You can't see it from all the way over here, but it's over there, which is the first part, which is until 1939, like right before the outbreak of the Second World War. I believe the first part stops with the Sudetenland crisis in Czechoslovakia. Is it? Is it? No. No. Sudetenland was in 1938, yeah, with the Munich Agreement. Yeah. No. This is after. Yeah, this is right after the Sudetenland crisis when, in March 15th of 1939, Hitler decides to say, you know what, we're just going to annex all of Czechoslovakia, which is obviously what he did. And then and then it goes right into the problem with Poland and the outbreak there and the central government. And it's a really crazy time. And what I really like about this book, or these two books, is that like with any historian, where they always try to it's a moral history because there's always a message that is being conveyed. And I really do like the message where I agree with what this man is saying, like Volker Ulrich, not Hitler. Because people are always trying to figure out, like, was this guy always a fucking rabid anti-Semite? Was this guy always a fucking psychopath? Because a lot of historians and a lot of people that, you know, dive into this quagmire of a man always try to make, always try to find out where that came from, the origin, the genesis of what he would become later. And I really do like about that series, I mean, the first book, which is Ascent, is because it really it shows you and it highlights you that there is nothing original about Adolf Hitler. Nothing. His anti Semitism, his conquest of living space in the East, uh, nothing is original about this guy. And I never really knew how pervasive those sort of ideas were in Germany or even in Europe in general at the turn of the 20th century. Because I really like how he talks about it, because when this guy moved to Vienna, Austria-Hungary was in turmoil. Right before the First World War, it was already going through some serious shit. The multinationalism and more nationalities wanted to represent themselves in the government and stuff like that. And the Austria-Hungary, I can't even talk about that too much because that's a whole can of it's a can of hydras. Austria-Hungary with with the monarchy, but with the two dual governments, and they're two separate from one another, the two diets, and too complicated for us to talk about. But but during these moments, before these years, before the First World War, there was already serious stuff going on that were really resonating with this man later on. And that's foreign incursions, and how foreigners and are breaching into Germany and Greater Germany, whether it be Austria or Germany in general, and degrading and eroding the fabric of the culture. So there's a lot of xenophobia going on during these times, like a whole lot of xenophobia. Like, what the fuck are these Croats and Slavs and all these motherfuckers doing on this government trying to be represented? And they're gonna destroy our values, and that's why we're going through all this turmoil. We have all these fucking foreigners ruining everything. Who are they? And that's not a phenomenon of this century. There's always been xenophobia, and there always will be xenophobia. It's deeply embedded in our cerebral cortex. It's an abstract manifestation of our tribalistic tendencies, of course. And then once the First World War starts, and it talks about his experiences there as a runner, which was a very dangerous job, obviously, but and especially after, because after he goes to Munich in Bavaria, and Bavaria became the capital of Nazi power. That's where this man made his name, and that's what he really, like, the author really go. I love that part is when he goes really into depth on the anti-Semitism. Like, like, if you don't know, like, the at the end of the First World War, there was no culpability whatsoever in the German military, the German leadership. Nobody wanted to accept the blame for the catastrophe that befell their country because of their own imperialistic aspirations. How much culpability does Germany have at the first start in the First World War is a highly debated topic. Some people think it's all Germany. Some people think it's a conglomerate. It's equal, or it's spread among Britain and France and Russia and Austria-Hungary and all these, and then you have Serbia with the Black Hand, and they were the ones that killed Archduke Ferdinand, right? With the backing of Russia, because Russia basically had no friends. Before the outbreak of the First World War, they were kind of had their hands tied, especially after the embarrassment of the Russo-Japanese War. They kind of had to save face. Even though Serbia was basically a country full of degenerates and people had really low opinion on Germany. I mean, they openly supported a terror organization group, the Black Hand. And so after the First World War, and ridiculous Treaty of Versailles and the sanctions and reducing the military to 100,000 and the war reparations and stuff like that, and and a lot of stuff started creeping up in the popular thought about the November criminals and the stab in the back theory, and how Germans were dying in the front lines, and the pen pushers and the governments were the ones that were holding people back and fomenting dissent and doubt into the outcome of the First World War, which one can argue the First World War was over when the Schleichling plan. I know I'm butchering the pronunciations. I apologize. Uh, I want to learn German. That's definitely on my list. But the Schleichling plan was what they enact, what they obviously conducted with is like invading a neutral country of Belgium, quickly running through northern France, cutting them off from the sea, and then wiping out France. But it had to be like that because Germany has a terrible geographical position, being in the sandwiched in the middle of Europe with not a whole lot of resources. It's not easily defensible. So that's why Germans and German military has always been obsessed with quick, decisive victories. That's why Blitzkrieg is not original. It's always been this way. That's the Prussians did that in the Austro-Prussian War, and the Franco-Prussian War as well. It has to be quick. It has to be quick as possible, because when these conflicts really start growing in time and start dragging on, the supply and logistical nightmare that is being living in the middle of Europe start becoming more and more apparent quite rapidly. And that's what happened in the Second World War as well. Uh, but I get ahead of myself. So, and when I was talking about this man not being original, is because the November criminals, the stab in the back, how Jews weren't fighting in the front lines. They were just making money off people, even though a lot of Jews fought in the First World War. A lot of Jews were German nationalists. A lot of Jews won the Iron Medal, first class, second class, the Order of the Order of Hohenzollern, a lot of great medals. But obviously, there was a lot of anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism was something that was just rampant, rampant. It's always been rampant, actually. Um, you know, I love Nietzsche. Nietzsche is my favorite philosopher. Guy's an anti-Semite. I don't hate him because of that. I don't agree with that aspect of his life, but he didn't kill a lot of people. He didn't kill anybody, as far as I know. So, and that was really going on in Munich, because in 1919 there was an actual communist revolution. The communists actually took over Munich, and a lot of them were Jewish. A lot of them were Jewish communists. A lot of the communist leaders that took over Bavaria were communists. So that whole Jewish Bolshevik theory started there, and he was living there. Hitler was living in Munich, trying to live as long as he can in the military, because he knew that he had no prospects. He had no prospects before the First World War, and he had no prospects after. The guy was a homeless artist. Like I'm sure a lot of people have heard that. The guy was homeless in Vienna. He had no money until the very end. He started making some money selling paintings and stuff like that, so he was able to afford living in a men's home and shit like that. So he was homeless, but not forever. So, and then after, it became really a hotbed of radical thinking. Munich, really radical thought. And like I said, like the whole even eugenics, that's not new. That keeping the bloodlines pure, which is what I was alluded to earlier with the xenophobia. These foreigners encouraging on our culture and our nation, and all this meddling and middling and of bloodlines. It's just gonna absolutely eradicate the German people, because we have to keep the bloodlines pure, and we have to make sure that our nation is strong with the bloodlines, with the families. So we have to make Germans with Germans, and make sure that we keep everybody else the fuck out, because they're just making us worse. They're just giving us bad genetics. We're superior. Something original about this guy. That was something that was really common. And Bavaria really started, that it made this guy's career. That's where he, found the National Socialist German Workers' Party, even though that's not what it was called when he found in 1919. But it did change in February 1920 with the whole referendum and stuff like that, or the points. And it was just a lot of old, anti-Jewish. A lot of people, like I said, it was a really common thing, especially after the First World War, that people were like, "Bro, it was the Jews. The Jews were making all the money. They were setting us up. They were setting up Germany so they can fucking topple us because Germany was shit after the First World War. There's fucking pictures of a woman with a car full of Reichsmarks just to buy a loaf of bread." I think that was later on. I think that was after the Great Depression, so we're 10 years ahead. But still, it was really fucking terrible. And and it's just like, I just love these books because it just tells you that how this man started developing, how his rationale started developing, how he's basically a sponge. He's basically a sponge. You just are soaking up all this information, and he proclaimed it one time. He's like, "Oh, I only read things that further augment my arguments." This guy is not interested in reading different philosophies or reading different perspectives of different people and trying to really become a Neapolitan and stuff like that. Fuck that shit. I'm an anti-Semite. I don't like Jews. I want to live in space. So I'm going to read stuff that is going to further vindicate my already existing thoughts and views. And that's what he did. You have the whole 1923 failed putsch in the 8th and 9th of November. You was it 18th? Yeah, it's the 8th and 9th of November. Yeah, 1923. And it really goes into dive. Like I said, I'm not gonna go into a deep dive, but it's really interesting. I remember he really starts talking about that the failed putsch. It really starts showing you like it was basically a preview of what's gonna happen when the Nazis took power, because yes, say we're going crazy during that time. That night, they were going crazy. They were going to fucking Jews' houses, rounding people up, beating the shit out of them. Because there's a whole lot of gang violence in Germany. A whole lot of gang violence with the communists and the social democrats and the far right nationalists, and people were just fighting on the streets with the Freikorps and the militias. It was just the Reichswehr. It was just a fucking mess, a mess. And in those situations where these two people can come into the place, chaos breeds opportunity. And in the chaos and in desperation, people look for a savior. People look for a messiah, someone to save them. And that's just how we are, because we humans are naturally religious. And it just shows you, like, I know this is controversial, but this man was low key a mad genius. He was a madman, sure, a butcher. There's no arguments there. But this man was a genius. He was able to take advantage of the situation. He was able to take advantage of the sentiments that was going now that so many people, normal people, were harboring deep in their hearts during these turbulent times after the First World War, and he was really able to take advantage of that. Place himself as this man that's going to rise up and bring people back and bring Germany out of the hole and really place himself as a great European power. And he was just, he was a populist, a rabble rousing and rabid anti-Semite populist, but he was a populist, and he really was and his rhetoric just reached across all different political allegiances, all different walks of life, and stuff like that. And a lot of people really fell to it. And I really do enjoy how this. Remember, like, bro, this guy goes into depth about how they slowly started getting power after the failed putsch, and how this he basically got lucky in becoming chancellor in 1933. Because this guy was just rigid. Like, no, I want absolute power. I don't want a coalition with people. I don't want to share power with people. You have to give us absolute power. You have to let the Nazis in. They were on the brink of absolute collapse at the end of 1932. On the brink of collapse. They were not getting any more seats in the Reichstag. They were not getting any more seats in the government. Like, they were winning elections, but they weren't winning anything. They weren't winning any seats. They weren't winning any domination. They weren't winning any, what is it, popular uh, uh, placements in the different states of Württemberg and Prussia and Bavaria. Well, Bavaria, yeah, but, or Baden or Hamburg. They weren't able to control everything. It's through backdoor dealings. It's through Hindenburg, and it's through and it's through Hindenburg that really was like, okay, we need a far right, we need nationalists because the guy was a fucking monarchist. Hindenburg was a president, if you don't know. But like I said, I'm not gonna. It's not any deep dive. You guys are just gonna have to figure this out. It's through that Hitler became chancellor in the 30th of January of 1933. It wasn't a triumph of will as Nazi propaganda would like to make you believe afterwards. Especially with the triumph of the will in 1935, which is a famous film with one of the first Nuremberg rallies. It's absolutely crazy when you read about this stuff. Because right now I'm on the second part, and he goes, like I said, he goes through the whole 1935 one. He's like, all right, we're gonna leave the League of Nations, and we're gonna bring back 2-year conscriptions, and we're gonna bring up the standing military force 5 times. We're gonna put it up to 500,000 people. Foreign, he was winning a lot of foreign policy victories because people were trying to appease him, and it just brushes upon a whole more complicated subject on the states of all of these nations after the First World War, especially with the Great Depression. France was not ready to go to war, and neither was England. France was decimated by the First World War in male demographics. They were not ready to go to war in the early 1930s. And if France is not going to go to war, neither is England, because England's not going to go to war by itself. And Russia had no interest. Soviet Union, there's no way that the Brits were going to bring in the Soviet Union. The Brits were trying to topple Stalin Lenin in 1917. And the Britain and France and the United States was sending money and resources to support the whites and the whites and the royalists and all this shit that was trying to go. They're trying to topple the Bolsheviks after the October Revolution. Nobody trusted the Soviet Union. Nobody liked the Soviet Union. And I fucking love how in the book it really shows you that Hitler really took advantage of that anti-Bolshevik sentiment, anti-communist sentiment. Him putting us up like, oh, I'm this defense. I'm this man that's going to protect Europe from the threat of communism, which was a popular sentiment, which is a popular fear among a lot of the European nations. Like I said, Germany was about to be toppled by communism, and a lot of nations were scared of being communists. A lot of nations became totalitarian. You had 1922. Was it 1921, 1922, with the fascist takeover of Mussolini and Duce in Italy? You had Greece that became totalitarian, not communist. But there was a totalitarian revolution. The First World War destroyed monarchies. The Ottoman Empire was no more. Austria-Hungary was no more. The Hohenzollern's were no more. The Russians, the fucking Romanovs, no more. So it's a very easy vacuum to fill with totalitarian because, people are used to an absolute ruler. So it's not really a difficult transition, even though, and I'm not saying that's a good excuse to do those things, but it was. And it's just, I'm not done with the book. I'm probably going to go at this again once I'm done. Because right now I'm on the second part. The Second World War started, and the author's making the case that since Operation Barbarossa did not achieve the Blitzkrieg success, the war was already over. And it's a valid argument. It's a very valid argument because, as I alluded to before, one of the main problems with Germany is the lack of supplies, lack of resources. And the armaments program, the rearmaments program enacted in 1934 was 1934 or 1936, I forgot. The rearmaments and the 4-year plans on the Goering. Goering was made the director of the 4-year plan and war economy in 1936. But it was fucking them over. They were building all of this. They were rebuilding the military on foreign credit, on foreign currency. They didn't even have a reserve foreign currency. That economy was doomed to fail. Even if Nazi Germany somehow won the Second World War, they were not going to be able to maintain that government and maintain that army for any lengthy period of time. That's why even Goering, in one of the meetings, he said, like, oh, in terms of the economy, we're just going to have to figure that out when we conquer other nations. We're just going to have to really take their resources and plunder their ass just so we can maintain a flow. And Hitler said the same thing right before the outbreak of the Second World War. He was telling his officers in 1938, like, hey, look, we got to go to war. It's when he admitted, like, we got to go to war. We got to go to war now because we have the military superiority right now. And time is not on our side. It's on the enemy's side. We can't wait for other people. We can't wait till 1943 because then all the other militaries will be coming up. And the economy will be in shambles by then because of the rearmaments. The rapid rearmament program was dooming the German economy, dooming them to bankruptcy, to utter bankruptcy. And it was already being felt in 1938, 1939. Already. People were already seeing this in 1934 with Hans Schuler. Hans Schuler had to leave the munitions for Goering because he was constantly constantly protesting, saying, like, dude, we can't do this. We have to scale down the rearmament program. We're fucking ourselves over in the ass. And Hitler booted him out. And it just shows you that the lack of resources. And that's why I've always kind of agreed with Hitler's premise that taking Kiev and taking Ukraine and taking the oil fields and taking the resources and the granary that, Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe was actually a better decision than going to Russia. I mean, to Moscow, than Moscow, apologize, than taking Moscow because they desperately need resources. And Orlik makes a really compelling argument, that by the end of by December, by winter 1941, the war was over. It was over. They already lost 1,000,000 men. They lost a third of their men by the end of 1942, bro. A third. And Germany does not have the manpower resources to constantly bring reinforcements. And it's not just to recoup. It's in terms of numbers. It's also quality. A lot of these veteran units are going to be getting wiped out, and it just became a cascade of shit for the Germans. And right now I'm going on the Holocaust, the beginning of the Holocaust. I had to stop because it's brutal. One of the many pitfalls of reading about these sort of things, military history, is you go about these subjects that are just it's a lot to take in. It's a lot to take in. With the euthanasia program as well in 1939, killing mentally ill patients and gays and children born with deformities and stuff like that. They were taken to these different facilities and killed. First with over medications or overdosing basically, or thrown into a gas chamber or thrown into a truck where they will put the. It's brutal. And it goes really into depth on the war of annihilation that was the Eastern Front in the Second World War. How it was just brutal, brutal. And the mandate of the 30th of March of 1940, right before they go, a few months right before the Operation Barbarossa on the 22nd of June, he's saying, like, dude, no scruples. Don't worry about reprisals. Don't worry about court martials. Don't worry about anything. Fuck humanitarian rights. You kill everyone that you feel like you need to kill. This is Hitler to the soldiers, to the commanders of the Wehrmacht and the SS, and to kill all the political commissars. We have to make living space. Is brutal. It's absolutely fucking brutal, and it's very difficult to read sometimes. I've known about the massacres. I've known about the Einsatzgruppen. I've known about all this stuff, but it doesn't make it any easier when you start reading about it. I've read a lot about brutality. I've read a lot of brutal shit. I have a book on Genghis Khan. I just finished a book on Alexander. Doesn't make it any easier. Sometimes I just have to stop and be like, all right, let me take a break. I need to soak all this in, and it just the homicidal tendencies of this man is just ridiculous. And I'm just interested to finish this book because I know this guy becomes an absolute junkie as the war progresses. in favor of the Allies, and obviously, and to the detriment of Germany, he becomes even more rabidly anti-Semite, and more murderous, and at the same time more desperate and more hopeless. He knows it's lost, so he becomes a junkie. He becomes a vegetable at the end of it. Like in 1945, in the bunkers, that guy was senile. He had no idea where the fuck he was. Probably all drugged the fuck up. So it was already a 30-minute video. I'll come back to this subject at another time. I apologize, but this is a very interesting man. Um, it's just I don't really think we're gonna be able to meet so many evil people anymore like this. It's very difficult because I'm not a psychologist. I'm not even gonna try to figure this out. Yeah, I hope you guys read. This is a really great book. This is from Volker Ulrich. It's a two-parter. No shit, fucking awesome. Not the man, but the information. Awesome. And there's always something to learn in parallels to modern era and how people think and how we interact with one another, and it just shows the human nature and how diverse we can be in positive and negative ways, and there really is no limits to the brutality of harboring in every single human being. It just really is that simple. We all capable of being this man, given the wrong circumstances. I'm not gonna say right, given the wrong circumstances, given the wrong situations that you find yourself in, you know. So we'll leave you guys with that. Hope you all have a great day. And until next time, peace.